You're listening to Seek Travel Ride, a podcast sharing bike adventures from people from all over the world. And this episode is sponsored by Old Man Mountain, makers of the most durable bike racks out there. If you want to head out on an adventure, you need to strap gear onto your bike, and Old Man Mountain have you covered in a myriad of ways. Head to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Now, on to today's episode.
Actually, my first day in the desert, like I said, it was like a relief having been there dealing with the Egyptian police, like threatened with deportation a couple of times and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually I got free of Egypt and I was in Sudan. And I'm in this like big, massive, vast desert, and there's nothing around you but sand and the odd truck passing you. By noon, I had ridden like 95k or something, and I most of that time I'd just been bawling my eyes out as I was pedaling with this amazing tailwind behind me. And I remember stopping at one stage, and I was just like on the ground, just like hands in my head, couldn't stop the tears, and I was shaking, blah blah blah. And I remember like opening up Google Maps, and I just started zooming out of the map, and just this desert started to get bigger and bigger and bigger and way 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 bigger, and I was just like, Jesus, like I'm just a little tiny dot in this vast desert.
Welcome to Seek Travel Ride, where we share the stories and experiences of people taking amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello everybody, before we get into today's show, I just want to let you know that this is part 1 of 2. My interview with today's guest, Tomas Mac An T-Saoir, went for so long, there was no way this could be covered in a single episode, and to be honest with you, it would do his journey an injustice to try and rush through the experience he's had. So saddle up for part 1, and part 2 comes out next week. Hello listeners, Bella here, host of Seek Travel Ride, and my guest today is Tomas Mac An T-Saoir, who spent 8.5 years cycling his way all across the world. Now, his journey began way back in 2016 when he pedalled across the US, and I actually wonder if he knew then, when he first set off on that journey, all the bike travel adventures that lay ahead of him. In 2018, he set off again on a journey that traversed the length of Africa, on a route that would take him from Egypt to Cape Town along the east side of the continent. The stories from these two adventures alone could probably fill up a couple of podcast episodes in themselves, so I've got quite a challenge today to get into everything that Tomas has done, because he certainly wasn't finished once he reached Cape Town, and in 2020 he took a flight to New Zealand with the grand plan of riding all the way back to his lovely home in County Kerry, Ireland. But the global pandemic came across and put any plans of riding on pause for quite a significant time, as Tomas found himself stuck in New Zealand for a couple of years. With COVID lockdowns finally over with, he restarted that ride, crossed through Australia, Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent and on to Pakistan. He would eventually reach home in July 2025, but the route he took wasn't the, shall I say, conventional one. Countries like Afghanistan, Iran, and Syria were places he had to see for himself, and his experiences there are ones he says will shape his perspectives on life and people forever. Now, I often wonder what spending so much time travelling through so many different countries, observing so many cultures must be like. I imagine there's a routine in each day, and then there's also a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's coming up next. You're always meeting new people, you're often on the receiving end of incredible hospitality, and of course balancing all that good stuff out, there is also the literal discomfort that also sometimes comes with bike travel. Long times between being able to shower when you're wild camping, sickness on the road, perhaps even loneliness. These are all things I want to get into as we dig into Tomas's story and hear about his experiences from this huge round-the-world adventure. Tomas Mac An T-Saoir, a big warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to be speaking with you now, Tomas. We've been swapping messages, I feel like, for months. We nearly were able to meet in person this year while you were in France before you made it to Ireland. And now, finally, virtually, you're sat opposite me.
Opposite end of the world.
Exactly. I have so many questions for you, Tomas, about these amazing wild experiences you have had in almost a decade's worth of travel. The first question I have for you, and I ask this of all my guests, is Tomas Mac An T-Saoir, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode?
Yeah, I think it's still out the back. I was just with mates when you were probably like 8, 9, 10 years old or whatever, maybe even younger than that. But yeah, we used to just ride down to the beach. Like there's beaches like all around where I live in the Dingle Peninsula, and we just ride away down and just chill at the beach for a couple of hours and stuff like that. You know, just go swimming, jumping off the pier, whatever, jumping off the rock into the water, and you come back up. And I guess even before that, you know, you'd obviously have a bicycle with training wheels. I just remember like going out probably one of the very first times with my dad and my brother and my sister, and just at the other end of the village here that I live in, there's just a slight decline. You barely notice it. But I just remember like getting to the top there and then just seeing the road just like just finally just edge downhill, and I just turned around and came home. I just got too freaked out. I was just like, no, I started crying. Like rode the bike home, and
Oh, wow. So you were freaked out about the downhills when you were a little tacker.
yeah,
Oh, my
yeah,
goodness.
pretty much. 'Cause I didn't understand the concept of brakes back then. Obviously, that I just thought like if I go down, I'm just going to go down at like supersonic speed, and that was that.
You're going to fall off the world. Oh, gosh. Tomas, I'm scared of downhills now as an older person. It's because I have crashed going downhill, and every day I'm on the bike, I'm trying to live up to those fears and get rid of them. But I actually want to spend a little bit of time talking about where you grew up. I know we're going to go all the way around the world during this episode, but oh my gosh, that part of Ireland, it's a part I'm so curious and keen to come and discover for myself. I lived in Ireland for 18 months during COVID, and I couldn't get down there because of lockdowns. And I have seen images of that area and the Dingle Peninsula and heard of Kerry and know that, you know, if I'm travelling there, everything's written in Irish, and you would be someone who can speak Irish as well. I want to know what it's like living in that type of a community.
Yeah, I guess like back in my younger days, anyways, especially when you hit like your teenage years, I don't know, like, I mean, I guess like maybe for a lot of people, like you're kind of just like, oh, you know, you want to get out of home. And I guess I never truly appreciated it back here until I actually started cycling, funnily enough. But no, it's probably like one of the most beautiful places in Ireland. And anyone who visits would say that, and you can tell by like the sheer amount of people who want to move down here or try to move down here, etc. You've just got beautiful hills. Like Ireland isn't like a mountainous country, but we've got some nice hills down here. Mountains to us, but hills to probably many other nationalities. Lovely beaches, just like lovely quaint back road, like kind of your picturesque Irish roads and stuff. Got like Ireland's highest mountain pass, which pathetically for us is 450 meters. Like I've climbed up ones that are about 5 times the size of that one. And yeah, and then I guess like most places, the best thing about the place is the people that live here as well, whether they're local people or people who've moved in here. And yeah, it's just looking back on it, like I'm obviously very lucky to have been raised here, and even still today, so many of my friends are still here. All their neighbors, like it's kind of like family really, and we've got like a family pub here as well. I think because of that as well, you've just got like a deeper connection with people because you just see so many different people every day of the week, and people you mightn't normally see too often if you weren't living in a bar or whatever. Or like we live in the heart of the village as well. You know, we're not down some quiet countryside road at the end of a cul-de-sac or something. We're pretty much in the middle of the village, and it's the main road as well for anywhere like back further west than here and going into Dingle. So just like everything passes through here. You can sit outside with your morning coffee and you're just meeting people, waving to people, people passing in cars and stuff. So it's you don't get away with much though, small places like that as well. Everyone kind of knows everything about everyone. So that comes with the lifestyle.
Yeah, I have a saying, people sometimes know your business before you know it yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
It's funny, just what you're talking about there. It's like all I can hear, well, the sense I get from what you're talking about is like there's an overwhelming sense of community and togetherness there as well. And I sort of relate to it a little bit. I in France live in a small village, and similar to what you're describing there, our house, it's I guess in a lot of countries you call it a terrace house. In France it's called a maison de ville, which means that there's, literally joined to the houses next to you. Unlike a place like the UK or maybe Ireland even, not the houses don't all look the same. They're all very different, but they're still joined together. But it's in the middle of the street. And often my husband and I have quipped about, oh, would it be nice to have, a standalone house that's out of the village but sort of walking access. But there is something really beautiful actually about being in the village, and we've been adopted as the Australians, and you get this sense that you're really part of the community, and you see people, you see everything. Our village traffic jams typically herds of cows or sheep moving down the road. It is very much like that. But I get a sense that that's what you're telling me about growing up there in Dingle. You also mentioned the beaches. Wow, yeah. I have seen images. Oh, they would rival Australian beaches. Just not the water temperature.
Yeah, or it's like the killer jellyfish or anything like that. But
did you surf? Like, are they surf beaches?
Not particularly where I live, but maybe like a half an hour drive away. There's one called Inch. That's a good surfers beach. But back where I live, no, not unless it's like a really good windy day and just the waves are a bit bigger than normal. But no, it's rare you'd see people surfing back this way, unfortunately. But only about 40 minutes drive away. There's kind of a proper surfing beach. You get all the lessons and stuff there as well.
There's something magic about standing on a beach with a big weather system moving through and being right on the edge of the west coast of Ireland. You would receive the first brunt of the weather systems.
Yeah, we get some pretty good storms, especially winter time. If you people come down here just to storm watch and stuff, it might drive the rest of us locals half crazy. I don't really do winters at home anyways anymore, but I just remember when I did do winters here, just somewhat. But you just hop in the car. There's another beach called Clogher. It's only not even 5 minutes away in a car. And it's one that you just can't swim in because the currents are really dangerous down there. And there's a group of islands called the Blasket Islands off our coast. And there's the amount of shipwrecks. It's called the Blasket Sound. And it's just really, really dangerous water. But it's a great place to go watch the storms. It's just, you park up the car, you can roll down the window a little bit just to hear the waves crashing, the wind howling, rain pelting down outside or whatever. And it's usually the tail end of hurricanes that blow across from the States or the Caribbean or whatever.
I love those moments. Often, as long as I know that I'm safe in those moments.
Yeah, you don't get too close to the edge.
No, but I love those moments of nature. It's sort of like a moment of awe. Mother Nature makes you feel really, really teeny tiny. And it reminds me, in a weird way, of a conversation I had with a previous guest, Steph Devery, another Aussie, and she's living in Canada. And we were talking, she's done some amazing journeys as well, down through Africa like yourself too. And she was mentioning, we were talking about moments of like that, and she was saying something that she loves doing now that she stopped is whenever she sees a full moon, she reminds herself of every place in the world that she's wild camped and seen a full moon. And I was just thinking when you were describing that storm, I wonder how many places in the world you've experienced some wild, crazy weather in all different areas as well.
Yeah, there's probably been a few. The ones that would stand out I remember being in the States closer to Florida, and this really bad storm blew in. I had an American SIM card, and I was getting all these messages everyone stay indoors, whatever, it's a threat to life. And then to the north, I don't know, was it Tennessee or some state or something, but then I was getting these tornado notifications as well. And I was just well, that kind of rules out going further north just to avoid it, because it's what would you rather do, get hit by a storm or go having to deal with
blown up in a tornado.
Go having to deal with tornadoes.
Not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Yeah, exactly.
I was damn. But yeah, but I remember then the following day, so rode as much as I could that day, and then when the storm eventually blew in, you got you found some shelter. And I remember the next day, then it was a howling tailwind, and I was lovely, now is the day you can smash out some good miles. And I think half my bicycle spokes broke or something. It was just a mechanical day from hell.
Oh no.
And then where else now? I'm trying to think. There were some bad thunderstorms in Africa. One really particularly bad one, I think I'm pretty certain it was Zambia, one of my first days in Zambia. And I remember just being able to smell just the heat, the electricity off the ground, because the thunderstorm had just passed over. And I remember I was riding straight into it, and I stopped this car of local guys. And I was just like how bad, like, is this going to go away sometime soon or whatever? And they were just like, nah, like keep going, it's okay. So, and I really, really hate thunder and lightning. It's just one thing that petrifies the bejesus out of me.
Well, hang on. Do we put context around that? Does it petrify the bejesus out of you, say, when you're at the pub in Dingle, or or is it just when you're out on a bike out in the open?
No, I think this in any context, but yeah, but definitely more so being on a bike as well. It's just something I've never liked.
It's an extra level of vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was just like, when I was riding into it, I was like, I could just turn back. Like there was a town maybe like 20, 30 Ks behind me. And I was like, I could just race there and, get some cheap accommodation. But I was just like, you just have to face your fears as well. And I had to face them a good few times in Africa. And I was like, this is another fear I have to face, just like, there's literally lightning right up the road in front of me. And I was like, no, I just need to maybe stupidly, whatever. I was just like, no, I just need to keep going, keep on track, keep on my plan, whatever. And then, yeah, when I turned a couple of corners, it had actually started to drift away. But that's when I could smell everything off the road. Like it's almost as if like you could almost just see like the smoke or whatever rising. It obviously wasn't, but it was just playing tricks in your mind or whatever. But it was just, yeah, still a cool experience at the same time, though, for sure.
Yeah, especially after the fact.
Yeah, but I just remember being like, I was so like shakenly nervous and stuff, and I was just like, in my head, I was like, this is a bad idea. Like, just turn around, turn around, turn around. And then my legs just kept pedaling, so I kept going towards it.
Gosh, I was just thinking though, like being in a country when you were talking about America and getting the weather alerts, and you're like, well, what do I do? Okay, this is obviously really, really bad, and I'm out here vulnerable. I have to wind you back though, and I want to wind you back to how this all started. I mentioned in my intro you rode across the states. I think it was in 2016. Even coming up with that idea isn't really, what would I say, normal. It's not something that is, people do it, but it's not very common.
Yeah.
So when you set off with that idea, was that it? Or did you always grow up, Tomas, thinking, I want to go and see the world and I'm going to ride around it on a bike?
No, absolutely not. Even like that was so when I did the States, that was my first like even solo trip anywhere. Like I'd gone on family holidays and whatever else, but that was my first actual solo trip. Before that, I'd never been one like curious about the world or whatever. I mean, obviously, you did history class in school, geography. I'd interest in certain stuff, but not going traveling and stuff. When I was in my teenage years, I played sports, but I was also hooked on like video games, and I could easily spend the whole day in front of an Xbox or computer screen playing whatever video games. And then I guess when I was kind of 17, 18, me and my dad were watching the Tour de France one day, and at that stage I kind of started like using one of his bicycles to bike back to football training and stuff just to like improve my fitness. And then yeah, I just got like watched the Tour de France one day. I was like, oh hell, those bikes look cool, and bought a racing bike. And yeah, I kind of never looked back since then. But then with the States, so I'd gone away and done university, and I was kind of like cycling away just at my own leisure throughout university. I was doing like charity cycles and group rides and all that type of stuff. And even America wasn't even my own idea. It was just a friend of mine who I was actually working for. He's a big road biker, triathlete and stuff like that. And he mentioned going riding across the states together. And he asked me if I join him. And I was like, oh yeah, that looks good. I'll look into it. And I looked into it and I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And then he didn't do it in the end. And I went ahead and did it myself. Yeah.
Oh, he bailed and you just took his idea on. Wow.
He's running the hotel and he'd business stuff keeping him busy. And I was just like, finished university. I wanted a year out. And yeah, so I went away and did it. And then just, I guess since then, just never looked back, got hooked on it, got hooked on that style of traveling, the freedom of just like being able to go on your own. And yeah, so I can probably thank him for getting me kickstarted, because sometimes you do need someone to give you a bit of a push. Like I said, I'd never traveled alone before that. I was never into that sort of thing. And kind of looking back on it now, I wonder, like, if he hadn't mentioned it to me, would I have started it? Or if I'd gone on with my original life plan of going on to become a school teacher and just settling down in some town in Ireland, 31 years old now, maybe wife and kids, etc. But life turned out a completely different way. So
I've got two questions. One, did your friend ever manage to get himself across to the States and do it?
Yeah, and I'm glad I never went with him, because he rode across America in like 17 days. This guy does like Two, three
Whoa.
hundred kilometer. Oh, he's a fitness, like he's an
Is
animal.
it like Ram, like race across America or something like
No,
that? Wow,
yeah, but
that's huge.
he did his own. I think he did Australia in 21 days as well. I mean, this guy just like sits on the bike all day. I was just like crazy.
He's an ultra cyclist for sure.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
My second question for you, Tomas, is do you see yourself being able to be a school teacher now after what you've done?
Not quite yet. Probably no ever, I'd say. Just the idea of being like stuck in a classroom all day and then getting, I know you get like decent holidays and stuff, but yeah, that's like my big life crossroad decision right now was now that I'm finished my big trip that I wanted to do. And like, yeah, granted, it took like 8, 9 years to finish it, but now I'm just like, what do I do next type way. So I do have like stuff I've been thinking about, but right now, I just, yeah, I don't feel as if I want to stay in Ireland full time. Not just yet. So,
Was there a point when you were traveling through America that the idea of just traveling like this to other places really hit you then? Or, because it's funny, I'm torn. I don't really want to fly through America and go straight to Africa, but on the same respects, that was your first trip of touring. You mentioned how you really loved it. Do you think that's what, like, was it there that the thought of continuing on really hit you?
yeah, definitely. I knew by the time I'd finished the States that I had this like burning desire inside me to see more of the world because even crossing America, talking to Americans or local people in various different parts and, you're telling them where you're going to, what states you're going passing through, yada, yada. And it was kind of like, they were just like, oh, like you have to be very careful here and like don't go through these towns and stuff. And then you end up going through those towns and you didn't notice anything particularly bad about them. So by the time I'd finished America, I think I'd seen like I got a taste of what solo traveling was, what it was like, the bicycle tour. Because I'd like I said, I'd done charity rides and stuff, but I'd never gone like I guess on a long proper bicycle tour. That America spanned 7 weeks for me, but I'd never organized one on my own. I'd never done. I'd absolutely zero experience going there or whatever. And then by the time I finished, I was kind of like, I really, really enjoyed that. Like, I had a great time. I met some wonderful people, ups and downs, like part and parcel with any life trip or whatever you do in life. And then I was like, ah. But when I'd gone home, it wasn't my plan straight away to go away again. When I got back to Ireland, then I tried to go back to university, and I'd everything organized. Like I had my teacher's master's degree organized. I had where I was going to go do my work experience and stuff like that. I had my school got and stuff like that. And then the day I was meant to start, I just remember like not wanting to go down. Like I was meant to travel down to Cork that day to start, and then like start in a couple of days after that. And the day I was meant to leave to travel down, I was like, no, I was just like, I don't want to go back. And then I decided like, okay, well, if I'm not going back to college, I need to go and do something else. So that's when Africa came into my head then.
Why Africa? Like, why was that where you decided you'd ride from? Like, why not, the Wild Atlantic Way and then through Europe or something like that?
A couple of things. I thought at that stage I might be able to do one more big trip. And I was like, if I want to do a big one, I want to do a big one. I want to go someplace I'd never ever thought or imagined I'd ever get to my life. And then having like done the America trip and having seen like a different side to things there, different side to people, seeing how friendly, welcoming people were to me, how helpful they were, how like insistent that they wanted to be part of the trip in whatever way that they wanted to be part of it in. And then you just like see how like, the kindness of people, like just strangers that, they're just driving past you. And then I had my Irish
Oh
top
man,
on. I
you
had
would have been so popular with that on in America. Like the Irish presence in America is huge, right?
Yeah, like 1 in 3 Americans claim Irish heritage, so it's kind of crazy. Because like when I started that trip, I didn't really know what to expect because, like I said, it was my first trip. But then I was just like, oh, no one's gonna bother me because it's like I'm just some dude on a bike. Like, why would they care? Like, why would they have any interest in it? And then when people started having interest, I spent my days then on the bike being like, as I was just pedaling on by myself. I was like, why are people so keen? Why are they so interested? Like, why? I was like, is it my age? I was 22, or is it where I'm from, or is it just that like, you get talking to people and they might be strangers, but when you speak to them, like after a couple of minutes, it's as if you've been like friends all your life because they're just like, oh, hey, man, like I would love to do like when I was in my 20s, like I just like left university, or if they even went to university, they were just like, we had to get a job, went to work, and then all of a sudden you've got family, you've got kids, you've got a wife or husband or whatever. And then it's just like, life just like flies by you. And then before you realize it, it's probably like too late for them to do anything. So then you've got these conversations every single day going and going and going. And I remember like a couple of people being like, why are you wasting your time doing this, man? Like, go get a job, go do this. And then, but like at least 95% of the people was like, go live your life. Everything will work out the way you want it to work out. Live your dreams, whatever you want to do, write a to-do list. And then in the next 5, 10 years, whatever you want to leave aside for your journeys, just get them done and do them now while you can, because there's like, trust me, like I'm starting to do things that I wanted to do all my life now, but I got kids, I got grandkids. It's a bit different. I try to get away when I can, but they're just like, you've just got like almost total freedom, and they're just like, just go live your life the way you want to live it while you can now.
Yeah, it's amazing because I sort of think there's a lot of people who go through this sort of thought process as well with whatever decision they make. And I wonder the benefit, if I wind that back, I wonder the benefit of thinking about that and hearing those reactions while you're actually away from where you live, because I wonder sometimes whether where we're surrounded we feel the bigger weight of responsibility to lead the conventional and, to stay in the beautiful community that you have there in Dingle, to be the school teacher, to, maybe meet someone, settle down, family life, whatever that might be, who knows. But I wonder whether being away and hearing everyone sort of seeing you do stuff that's a bit out of the ordinary and telling you how much that is so awesome, and in hearing in a way their voice of maybe a tinge of regret for themselves of not doing it, I wonder how much that sort of really also helped push you into making the decision to do what you want to do, as opposed to being that school teacher and heading down to Cork. And my goodness, Tomas, do you ever wonder, that's like a sliding doors moment, do you ever wonder about that? Do you ever wonder, what if I took the bus what if I went to Cork and made that move?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose when you're pedaling along and you're spending so many hours on your own, you just have to preoccupy your mind. So a lot of questions do go through my head. But I guess if I had to go back and make that decision again, I definitely stick to the decision I made and gone traveling.
Mm.
I always try to say like, just live life with no regrets. But I do also like, I do think then like, oh, what if I had gone down that road? Like, where would I be? What would my life be like? Would I be more financially secure at 31? Would I have my own place? Would I be engaged? Or would I have kids by now? Or would I be living like a single life and hating working Monday to Friday, 9 to 4 or 5 job, and then kind of living for the weekend or whatever? But I think like it definitely made my decisions easier subsequently to that America trip about like going away. Now I half the time I don't even think about it. I'm just like, yeah, I'm gone. I'm going. I'll be back whenever I'm back again, and you know.
The best adventure bike is the one that you already have. Now, while I'm here in Australia, mine is a dual suspension mountain bike and it has no fork mounts. I used to wonder how I would go carrying anything up the front of that bike without risking damaging the fork and the front suspension. That's where Old Man Mountain's axle pack comes in. It has fixed that problem instantly for me. The axle pack comes with an Old Man Mountain axle that you put onto your bike, and that means the load transfers through that axle and not your fork. This means I can add cargo cages and bags and pack extra water, layers, overnight gear, food, the lot, and take my bike off-road on the roughest of tracks and know it's not going to be damaged from that load at all. It has helped turn my dual suspension mountain bike, which I've already owned, into the perfect adventure bike for the routes that I am riding. Go to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Support the brands that support this podcast. Now back to the episode. You were talking about Africa, you wanted to do something big. Africa, was it really appealing because it was, I don't want to fall into a stereotype, but was it more unknown? Was it an area of the world that you didn't know much about? Was it an area of the world that you grew up wanting to discover yourself? Again, why Africa and not South America? Why Africa, not Australia? Why Africa, not Southeast Asia?
When I was thinking about it, I kind of just opened up a map of the world and stuff. And, I was like, okay, I've already been to the States. Then obviously Europe would come into mind because it's closer to home and I guess a bit like easier to organize per se. And then, you're looking at Asia, South America, Africa. And then I don't know, as soon as I saw Africa and like being a child and growing up, whatever, you're kind of like, you'd always see films from Africa, videos, pictures, the wildlife. Egypt, the pyramids and stuff. And as soon as I got into my head, I kept it quiet initially because I knew, even going to the States, people were like, "Oh, it's like, don't go. It's really dangerous. Someone's going to shoot you. Someone's going to do this. Someone's going to run you over in their big, massive monster truck or whatever." And then I was just like, "Oh, like, I started looking into Africa, and just the more I Google about it, because you're Googling like, oh, I was looking at people who'd cycle there, got in touch with a few of them, and everything that came back was just like, do it. Like, you will not regret it. And then once I had that feedback, I kind of plucked up the courage to tell more people, tell family I was thinking about it. And of course, they're just like, no, it's too dangerous. It's this, it's that. I wouldn't say all the stereotypes came into it or whatever, but it was just, I guess, like us at our age, it's a different era because even like for my parents, it was just they didn't have the same opportunity we have to travel. You know,
Yeah.
my dad left school after high school, never went to university. My mom doesn't have a university degree. Whereas now there's almost this like obsession in Ireland and probably other countries about you have to go to college, and then it's not even like a college degree is enough. Now you need to do a master's and then PhD, blah blah blah. And then I was just like, I was looking around at home, and I was just like, no, I'd rather just I want to see what Africa's like. And look, I said to myself, if it doesn't work, because that's what I said when I was going to the States as well. I was just like, if it doesn't work, if I don't enjoy it, if it gets too scary, if it gets whatever, or if I just hate it, or if I don't feel as if I'm able to do it, then I can just come home. Like there was going to be no shame. At least you tried, you failed. At least you tried. It's better to try than not to try, and that's the way the thoughts I had about Africa. And I was like, if I can do one more cycle trip, I want to do something that would just also get me out of my comfort zone, go someplace that's like still very unknown to me. And even having been there, I spent 7 months in Africa, and even now I'm just like, yeah, I could go back and do that same trip again and probably see with a completely different set of eyes and have completely different experiences and stuff. Because it's just like 7 months in Africa is like nowhere. I mean, people spend a lifetime there, and they're still probably say, yeah, just not that they wouldn't understand it or whatever, but just, they're just like, oh, like, I don't know, you could just spend so much time there and you're still learning more and more about the continent, about the people, the cultures, the languages, the way of life out there. And
It reminds me, I'm just after speaking with Heinz Stucker not too long ago, and so it's funny, recency bias. I have a lot of what Heinz told me in my mind right now, and something that stuck out for me was the way that Heinz would visit countries. Was he visited every country and territory in the world, okay? So in one respect you could say I was at like a tick box exercise, but when you speak with Heinz you realise it wasn't. And he said something that struck me, which was when he went to a place, it was the people he would see it was the people that made his journeys, and that's what he went to see. He wasn't about, I want to go from here to here, I don't want to do this route, I don't want to traverse, I mean, obviously he did do that just inherently with the way he travelled, but the purpose of his travel was to experience and be curious and to find out what's around the bend, who am I going to meet, what am I going to learn. And I sort of feel like the way you talk about that now, it would be interesting if I got Tomas from 2016 to Tomas now in 2025. If I dropped you even back in the US, how would you travel differently? And like you said, with Africa, it's because, do you agree in a way, Tomas, it's those interactions that you're having which will shape your experiences of a country as well, right?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. If I'd gone back and done the America trip now with my experiences, because it was my first trip and I'd never traveled solo before. Like, I'll shamefully put up my hand and say, like, I never camped in America. I didn't have a tent with me. I was just like being taken in by people and paying for cheap accommodation. So that's kind of one regret I do have from that trip is that I didn't embrace cycling touring as I probably should be in a way as well, which is something I rectified once I got to. It was honestly a learning experience, I guess. Like even back then, like even if someone had given me a tent, I probably wouldn't even know how to put it together. You obviously could YouTube it or whatever, but like
Yeah,
I wouldn't have a clue how to like,
everyone goes
yeah,
through that
even like a
struggle.
cooking stove. I had nothing like that, and it was just like kind of funny looking back in it now to see how much you've developed in that time as well. I'd never, even as a kid, like you'd never, 'cause we have the family bar here. Summers are always busy. Family holidays were always like kind of winter time. We never went properly camping or anything like that. It was just summers are busy. It was focus on the business and stuff because that's the bread and butter income for the family.
Yeah. Have you inspired some of your family to do some travel? I'm not saying have you inspired some of your family to go to, I don't know, pick a country, Bella, Namibia. I don't know.
Yeah.
but Like, how have your family embraced what you're doing?
Well, my brother became a police officer, so so he probably saw the. Yeah, I don't know. But they do go traveling and stuff. Like as my own immediate family, from what like even just like my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, they wouldn't be like travelers like what I've become. Like I don't think I got it from any of them to get this bug just to tear off on a bicycle or whatever. My uncle does a lot of traveling and stuff, but like holidays, skiing, and things like that. In terms of like just packing up and going away for 6 months of the year, I don't know anyone in my family who's done that per se.
Like a camping holiday or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my uncle, like his side of the family, they do a lot of camping. My cousin like, moves away to Chamonix kind of every year to go rock climbing and things like that. They do a lot of camping.
Water
Yeah,
place?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But just in terms of like growing up, as I said, like I never had aspirations to go traveling. I never had like any inspirations to do it or whatever. I never had like that inspirational person I was always like looking towards or whatever. It kind of just, I think it all just kind of happened by accident. And then I just jumped on the bandwagon. I said, oh, actually, yeah, this is cool. Let's keep doing this. It's kind of a strange way of getting involved in it. I guess it's different to, I'm sure there's other people who were camping as kids and like grew up reading travel books and stuff. I was never that like that.
Yeah.
So it's never too late to get into it to anyone that's listening. I was like 22 doing my first trip, 24 going to the States before I learned how to put up a tent and things like that. So you can easily get into that. You don't have to, I guess, grow up like that either. That you can just like be like a bit of a late developer like I was, and other people that were, I've met other travelers who are 20, 30 years older than I am that got into it in their 50s and things like that. So kind of cool that you can just start up anytime you want.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you can learn as you go.
Yeah,
Cannot count on both hands anymore how many amazing people I've interviewed who've done amazing adventures, and it was only during their adventure that they learnt how to change a puncture, for example. Rob McLennan, he rode from London to Cape Town, and I think he said he'd never changed a flat tyre, and he learnt when he was on his trip. And I think something that I've seen you mention before as well, Tomas, is you don't need this supreme fitness to be able to do it either. You had mentioned how, I think on one of your journeys, it had been, was it 6 months or so in between actually riding a bike before setting off again?
yeah.
But it hasn't stopped you. You just, it might not be comfortable.
For the first couple of weeks, and then you build up the fitness again.
Do you find it takes about 2 weeks to get into a rhythm?
The last trip I started, I left from my cousin, so near Dubai. It took about probably 7 to 10 days. I remember the first day I was in, it was 38 degrees. I just left Ireland. It was like October. So it was getting cold here. Like today is what, the 20,
Yeah.
whatever, first or second of It's like 7 degrees outside. Like it was a cold day today. So you're going from that into 38 degrees. And I remember leaving my cousin's house. It was just
Broken.
yeah, and you're heading off into this desert road, like, so there's not much shade. So, like, any signpost that just about gave me enough shade, I just stand there. My bike, of course, was in the sun. My water bottles were gone stinky warm. And even that, like, saying that, like, you can learn things as you go along. But, there's just some stuff like like the extreme weathers you face as well. Like, sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just have to, like, micromanage yourself as best you can. And experience obviously will kick in, like looking for shade. Thankfully, as well, like in the UAE, there's just like these water dispensers scattered around the highways and stuff, like outside people's houses usually, or outside of a mosque. So at least you've access to the cold, clean drinking water.
Yeah, like actually just what you were talking about, the extremes. Like that is something that everyone who rides in the heat of a day can understand, but you don't sort of think about just like the grimness of, okay, it's hot and I've got water, but it's actually like tepid. Or, I could nearly make a cup of tea with this.
When it makes your throat feel itchy and stuff, I stopped drinking. And a trick I learned in Africa was stick a couple of tea bags in, because at least you're drinking lukewarm tea.
Such an Irish person.
Yeah.
Barry's tea?
I was actually given a stash of that in Africa, and then, yeah, when I was in Tanzania, it was just like 40 degrees every day. It was horrible, and apart from riding at night time, which usually is kind of like a no-no in some countries with wildlife and stuff, I was like, feck it, like I need to get through these tea bags. I have a huge stash of tea bags in my bag, so I started lumping two or three tea bags into my water bottle, and it was perfect. It was like lukewarm tea, and it was just so much better to drink. And my throat wasn't getting all scratchy. It wasn't like this horrible warm water to drink that we've all become accustomed to sometimes as well.
Yeah. I wonder, are you know how you said you don't like the winters and you get away from them? Are you smart enough? I don't take that back. I'm sure you're smart. But do you plan your trips to avoid winter time? And do you plan to keep following the warmer weather? Or is it just you can't avoid it depending on where you are? Like, you've been to northern Pakistan, for example, high up in the mountains or something. Is it always going to be cold there? Like, for example?
Yeah, that was like December time, 2023. Well, usually with the way my life has kind of worked out the last few years since COVID, I've come home to work in the family pub for summer just to save up money. I'm not sponsored or anything like that, so I need to work to save up money to go traveling again. So like that really it narrows down like the year for you because I know I'm probably going to be home between like April, May to September, October. So then I can only go winter time. So I've done like I know that means like kind of at the moment rules out like doing the Pamir Highway or whatever because that's extreme winter up there at 5,000 to 6,000 meters elevation. So that's why like when I went back to Southeast Asia and I was going to Central Asia, I had to take that southern route. In a way, I suppose it kind of like forced me into going to India, Pakistan, Afghanistan because initially I had planned to do China, the Pamir Highway, drop down into like Tajikistan and go from wherever from there. But then because I was going back in winter time, that kind of ruled all that out. I kind of forced my hand into going more southern then. So like I just normally had gone back to where I've left the bicycle just to finish off the trip from New Zealand. But now that I have finished that trip and I can go away this winter and go wherever I want, it's more of a struggle to decide now because I can kind of go any like I've done a good chunk of the world, so I can kind of go wherever I want to go. So now the weather does factor in being in some place in the winter or being in some place in the summer. Like if I go back down south to like Australia, New Zealand, it'll be summertime, South America, or if I go back to the Middle East or Europe or wherever, then you're going to face winter conditions and it's cold and it's wet or it's snowy or whatever. So.
Is there part of you that enjoys being in those extremes? Like maybe not in the moment, but reflecting back. I was messaging with a few previous guests yesterday, and one of them was joking they almost have Stockholm syndrome, they think, because they really, really want to go back to a place which was super tough in the moment. And actually, I'll call it out. It was Fergal. Hi, Fergal Gwen. And he was talking about China, and he did go through China in the middle of winter. And my gosh, if ever there's an advertisement for me to not go to China in winter, I'll just need to look through Fergal's stories where it was pretty grim. But he was saying he really wants to go back there. And for him, he can't even picture China being anything other than Siberia because it was like -10. It was like a warm day. But does part of you do what Fergal does and look back on the hard times with a real big lens of rose-tinted glasses on? And do you cherish getting through the hard times? Or to put it differently, and actually recency bias, I'll mention Heinz again. When I spoke with Heinz, he was talking about, when it rained, he quite unashamedly said, well, I'm not going to ride today, it's raining. There's no joy in going out all day in the pouring rain. And he spent, I think his record was 5 days in his tent in northern Spain in San Sebastian to avoid it. Which of the two are you? Do you relish going out and putting yourself through stuff? Or are you sort of like, you know what, I'm doing this for enjoyment and that's not fun, so I'm just going to wait until it's fun again?
Yeah, I guess sometimes it's a bit of both. I can definitely see where they're both coming from because I've had so many challenges and stuff on the trips, whether it's been weather, personal stuff, just bad mentality some days or whatever, because it has like gone on for so long, I suppose. And looking back on it, like we were talking earlier, I was saying that I did a university talk last week, and I remember talking to them about it, and I was like, they're the moments when you have tough moments or whatever, or you might just be mentally low, or you just feel as if like your batteries need a bit of a recharge, but you can't. You just have to keep moving. And I remember talking to another Irish guy from Limerick called Will, and he rode around the world between 2015 and 18. I remember just like we've spoken so many times together, but also reading his blog was incredible, and he's gone on to write a book as well about it. But I remember him, saying, "Oh, like when you're down in the dumps and there's no one there to pick you up or whatever, you need to pick yourself up essentially. It's like an old Irish saying, like you just need to take your spoonful of cement and just like, not, I wouldn't say like toughen up, but just to like get on with it. the end of the day, for me, anyways, no one forced me to go on these journeys. No one forced me to go tackle Africa top to bottom and cycle through numerous different deserts. No one forced me to cycle across Afghanistan,
Yeah.
facing fears of dealing with people like the Taliban. No one forced me to go to Syria right after the revolution finished. So when I do have those days, and in a weird way, I kind of do enjoy them. Like I might be crying, I might be like screaming to the top of my voice, I might be like hating myself, wondering why I've made the decisions I've made in life or whatever. But at the end of the day, when you can get over those days, no matter how bad they can be, and like they can be pretty bloody bad, they're the days you kind of look back on and you're just like, it's easy to look back on the good days, when you're cycling through beautiful sunsets or sunrises, or you've got beautiful scenery around you, whether it's like the high mountains of Pakistan or like really quaint, quiet beaches in Timor Leste, or cycling and you're seeing families out together having fun or whatever. But like it's easy to think of those days because there's so many of them as well. But it's those shitty days that you get through that I look back on and being like, I remember one of my first days in Sudan, going through the Nubian Sahara Desert, and I guess just being there was just a relief, having to deal with. I'm sure you've spoken to other guests about like riding in Egypt and just like the complete and utter hassle it is to deal with the government and police
Oh,
force. And
yeah, and the police in Egypt as well. Yeah.
it's just a nightmare. And I remember meeting a guy who rode Africa. I met him in Syria actually, Rob. He's a real good mate of mine now. I remember just like talking to him in just a random Syrian restaurant about it, and just there was other people at the table, and the two of us clicked. It was my first time meeting them, and we clicked in no time.
Fast friendships, right?
Yeah, we're just like friends online on Instagram or whatever, and then we finally met in person in Syria, and we were just at
That
the
is, can I
restaurant just
just say
talking about.
quickly, that is such a random sentence. We're just friends online and we randomly met in Syria.
Yeah, we still laugh about it today. But we were just sitting at this restaurant and there was like five or six other people around the table and the two of us were just like absolutely effing and blinding about the Egyptian police force and they're all just like, what are you guys talking about? And we're just like, go ride your bicycle in Egypt.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. But anyways, going back to Sudan, my first day in the desert. Like I said, it was like a relief having been there dealing with the Egyptian police, like threatened with deportation a couple of times and blah blah blah. And then eventually I got free of Egypt and I was in Sudan and I'm in this like big, massive, vast desert, and there's nothing around you but sand and the odd truck passing you. And I remember just like by noon, I had ridden like 95k or something, and I most of that time I'd just been bawling my eyes out as I was pedaling with this amazing tailwind behind me. And I remember stopping at one stage, and I was just like on the ground, just like hands in my head, couldn't stop the tears, and I was shaking, blah blah blah. And I remember like opening up Google Maps, and I just started zooming out of the map, and just this desert started to get bigger and bigger and bigger and way 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 bigger, and I was just like, Jesus, like I'm just a little tiny tiny dot in this vast desert. And then all the worries came in, like, and even before going on that trip to Africa, and not that people meant it in a bad way, but it was just more like people concerned and stuff. But they were just like, "Oh, like you're not going to survive Africa." It was great knowing you, and I was 24 at the stage.
Hang on, people actually saying it's great. It's been great knowing you. I won't see you again because you're going to Africa. Oh my gosh! Talk about putting fears onto you, right? Those shoulders feel quite heavy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now some of them might have been joking or whatever, but like at the end of the day, it does sit at the back of your mind because you're just like, shit, like what if they're right? Like, what if something did happen? And that was one of my first time. I guess in Egypt, it was just so full on every single day that I didn't really get a chance to stop and digest what I was actually doing. Because every day it was just like, how do I avoid the police? How can I hide from the police? How can I deal with them? Having to talk to so many different people. You're on the phone to one police chief, and then you're talking to somebody from not quite the government, but like higher than the police chief or whatever. And then you get to Sudan, and I'm in the desert, and then there's just like complete peace. There's nothing around me, the sand, the bicycle, the odd truck, and in my own head and my own thoughts and stuff. And it was just like the first real moment where I was just like, can I do this? Can I not do this? And then, you get through that part and then the rest of the desert I just flew through. I think you have like for me anyways, sometimes I have to have this like breakdown where just inside of me, you kind of like, you feel as if you're crumbling inside, you're getting anxiety, you're thinking you're going to have a panic attack. And then you manage to get past it. And then you get back on the bike. And then you're kind of like, what the hell just happened there? Like, I feel completely fine now. And then, you go full throttle, and it's just like something inside you side kind of like, I guess, mentally breaks, or it clicks, breaks. And then you kind of just like reform yourself in a better way, like in a stronger way. And you're just like, okay, these are challenges I'm going to have to face. I can't call my mom and dad or my best friends or my family, my brother, my sister, and be like, hey, like, I need someone.
Can I get a lift?
Yeah.
You're on your own, and it's that realization that I've got to deal with it. And you're
Yeah.
breaking, but then you deal with it, and you can look back on it going, there's a confidence you get from that too, right?
Yeah. Before I would have played like sports, like team sports, Gaelic football, soccer, rugby, and you've got teammates and things like that. So you're never alone on the pitch, and you might make a mistake, and somebody might be like, "Oh, Jesus, like stop doing that, like get your head together," and then someone else will come over and be like, pat you on the back, being like, "Just take it easy, you made a mistake," and then the game goes on pretty much, and try to, well, whatever, and then you got someone trying to give you comforting words, and then but when you're out on your own, like that day in Sudan, and you don't have that person beside you to be like, Jesus, Tomas, you might be struggling now, but look at the map of Africa again. Instead of focusing on this big, massive desert, focus on what's between you and South Africa and Cape Town, which was my finish goal.
Refocus yourself.
Yeah. So, kind of like try look at the bigger picture. And yeah, I guess it's all part of the fun and games of traveling like that as well.
Well, I think one of the most important things you've mentioned there is, when we were talking earlier about people thinking about the physical element of traveling and, even I don't know how to put a tent up, or I can't ride, I'm not fit enough, or something like that. I think there's a huge element that I think one of the hardest things on this long distance traveling and speaking with guests has been that mental load. We talked right at the start of the show about how you grew up in your village there in County Kerry with such a huge sense of community. You're talking about playing team sports with it. Again, there's community. And then when you're on a solo journey, you have moments where you're meeting strangers and you get welcomed into their community, but there are days where you are on your own. And it's that mental load of being able to take yourself out of a panic attack, for example, if anxiety is something, or the mental health aspect of it. Like there are times where you don't want to be on your own, or you can be depressed and really down with your own thoughts, and being able to get through that. Do you find through those moments in Sudan now you've experienced, you take confidence from it? So I imagine it's not the only time you've potentially felt like that. You started your journey in 2016. It's 9 years later now. Technology has advanced in ways that we can be as connected as we want with people, and then on the flip side, we can feel disconnected because of that as well. How do you deal with that side of it? Listeners, if you absolutely love this podcast and you love tuning into the stories that I bring to you each and every week, you can help me and support the show by heading to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Shout me a few virtual coffees and keep this podcast rolling. Back to the episode.
Usually I just let it happen, because I tried fighting back against it, or tried to push it back to the back of my mind, but then and you might be successful doing that, but then it's just going to pop back up another day. So usually, if it does happen, and yeah, if it when it does happen, I just let all the emotions flow out. If I need to cry, I cry. If I need to scream, I scream. If I need to pick up a rock and just throw it at the ground, I'll pick up a rock and throw it at the ground. And then, because I know, like, having been through those experiences, that time will pass. It might take a day or two, and you still might feel down in the dumps or whatever. But I don't know. I just find like a good cry always. And I remember, like, when I first started admitting it, because I always thought, like, you have to be super tough to go on these trips. You have to be completely self sufficient. You can't rely on anybody. You have to be able to, like, mind yourself without needing anyone's assistance or help or guidance or whatever. And then when I realized that, like, it doesn't have to be like that, that you can open up to people, you can ask for help, it just seems to take like a massive weight off your shoulders as well. That you might be doing this trip on your own, but you're never kind of truly alone either. That even if you are in the middle of a desert crying your eyes out. But later on in that day, I stopped at this roadside restaurant cafe place, and I just decided just to take the rest of the day off. It was just a mental decision I made. Like I said, I ridden like 100 kilometers by lunchtime. I could have kept going and like done 250K a day that day, but I was like, no, I need to like look after my mental health side of it now. I got here. Now I need to like reward myself with just taking the rest of the day off. And like you were saying about like connecting and disconnecting off the internet, the data connection was brutal, which probably worked out much better for me because instead of just like sitting there feeling sorry on my phone, I was just engaging with all these local Sudanese, Egyptian drivers or whoever was driving was passing through. So it was like countless amounts of tea with people, people coming over and like offering you food, bringing you snacks or whatever. And it just, not that you were asking for it. It was just that's their culture. That's just the way that they are. They're extremely kind people. So like after a few hours of that, of just engaging with people, my mood had I'd completely forgotten about what had happened earlier in the day, and then just the rest of the evening, you're just chilling out. The guys at the restaurant were super kind because passing through, you can stay at these. That's why they're there. You can stay at like there's a back room full of kind of like cot beds, and you just like throw your sleeping mat on one of them and your sleeping bag and kip for the night. So I was sleeping around all these drivers that were coming and going, taking their few hours break. Nobody bothered you, and it was just such a wonderful kind of second half of the day.
It's funny for me. It's almost like I interview a lot of guests doing a lot of different journeys. People like yourself who go all the way around the world. People who are doing ultra cycling races and racing 20 hours a day, so many days in a row to fly across a continent. And it's the one thing that I think weirdly both of them have in common is those extremes of emotions. That you get the highest of highs and sometimes you can get the lowest of lows, and sometimes they can fall within an hour of each other. And that's sort of what you're talking about there as well. In a way, I nearly think it's fortunate that low happened to you in Sudan, because from what I've heard interviewing people, when you mention it there, like the Sudanese people are some of the most hospitable people around, right?
Yeah, I think it was better it happened in Sudan than like Egypt, for example. Because if it had happened in Egypt and then I had this police officer screaming in my face, at least when it happened in Sudan, I was just like, all that was left was just like me in the sand and my tears blown in whatever direction or whatever. At least I didn't have to deal with someone threatening to send me out of the country or threatening to like arrest me or take the bicycle or arguing that I wanted to cycle 5 kilometers to the next checkpoint to have those same arguments 5 kilometers later again. So.
Gosh, I feel like we're not a great advertisement for Egypt.
No, it's a lovely country as well.
While I'm thinking of Egypt, the first thing I think of is pyramids, and it was actually through this show. I've learnt lots about the world through this show, listeners, and I unashamedly put my hand. I used to think I knew geography and history really well, and then I interviewed people and realised, oh, I've got lots to learn, which is good. But I realised there's pyramids in Sudan. Did you get to see those?
I didn't. I knew about them, but it was like another. Oh gosh, like 200 miles.
Oh, that's a big detour.
Yeah, and someone was waiting for me in Khartoum, and then like you visa deadlines and things like that. But looking back, then like I do wish I had gone there because those pyramids are like there's more pyramids in Sudan than there is in Egypt.
Yeah, and that's when I learnt about it as well. And also that there's less tourists seeing them. Obviously now, sadly, Sudan is not in a great place. But yeah, I've heard about them. They're amazing.
Yeah, and no one's there. Like you don't pay a ticket fee. Like no one is there, and they're just like in the middle of the sand or whatever. But they're unique as well because I think an Italian gold explorer had gone there in like sometime in 1800s, maybe the mid to late 1800s. But he started chipping off the top of them to look
Mm.
inside to see if there was any like gold or whatever he was looking for inside there. So like if anyone has been there, they'll know that like at the top, but then just the peak is just like gone right now. But hopefully they're still there, like after like with how horrible that civil war is there. But yeah.
I first learnt about them. It was, gosh, I think it was in the first year of doing this show. So I'll link it in the show notes, listeners. I was interviewing Rebecca Lowe, an awesome English lady. She's a journalist, a human rights journalist, and her trip to Mars was to go and discover more about the Middle East. And she travelled solo through all of the Middle East and stuff. And yeah, she was telling me about them when she was there in Sudan as well, which was amazing. Can I ask, does your trip and your roots sometime take form by yourself being curious and wanting to see certain things? We were talking about getting a map out and figuring out roughly, figuratively maybe even, where you're going to travel to. But Do you ever have mini milestones and goals and stuff that form how you decide where you're going to travel to?
I think over time, yeah, that's developed. And now we'll say my big grow or love is like going to countries now that like don't have great reputations. So, and that like that was one of the reasons of going to Africa, because the more people were just like, "Oh, don't go, it's too this, it's too that." I was just like, "No, I can't." I want to go there and see with my own two eyes. But then, I want, you'd rather instead of going to like touristy places, and the routes I've taken have obviously taken me through touristy parts of XYZ countries. But then this is like when you get off the beaten track and get to like those lesser traveled areas. And while I'm in those countries, so like, when I left Australia, I was looking at flights to Southeast Asia, and Singapore and Bali kept popping up everywhere. Singapore, Bali, they were like the two main destinations. But then Dili popped up, and shamefully, I was just like, "Where the hell is Dili?" So I googled Dili, Timor Leste, and then I was like, "Great, I'll go there." Just without even thinking. And then I booked the flight and then started looking into it because I was saying it to my Australian cousins, and they didn't like they knew it was there, but like none of them had been there or whatever, so I didn't really know much about the place.
It's pretty mountainous.
Yeah, it is like probably like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been because it's been untouched by tourism. Like pre-COVID, something like 60,000 people used to visit the place every year. I mean, it's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean compared to like the millions that go to Bali or Thailand every year around the same region. So being there and then, like you said, it's mountainous. They've got some of this like the most beautiful beaches. They're super clean. The wildlife in the water, or the marine life, is some of the best you'll see in the world, just because it hasn't been destroyed by over tourism or anything like that. A lot of people do go there to dive because with the marine life that's there, it's some of the best in the world, some of the richest waters. And then you've got the local people who just as if like I guess the best way to describe it is it's kind of like time has frozen there.
Mm.
People still live in these communal huts, literally on top of each other. You might have a small little village and then there's just like maybe 10 to 15 huts packed in there. There's a community feel around here, but like when you walk out your front door and your neighbor's door is literally right like a couple of feet away. And then just seeing the way that they live there, just how kind of, I guess, like it's a basic life, but just they have everything they need in a way as well. And then, yeah, you've got the coffee plantations up the mountainside. You have Jacko Island, which is probably one of the most beautiful islands in the world, just off the coast to the east. You've got lovely beaches around there. The roads are in horrible condition for the best part. Then you go down to the south side and you see these like weird projects so like there's dispute at the moment between Timor and Australia about like the Timorese Sea and like the gas reserves that are there. There's a dispute between the two countries. So when you go down to the south side of Timor, you just see like this highway that's built by the Chinese, and most of it's blocked because of rock slide, and that happened years and years ago, and no one's ever fixed it. They've got this like brand new airport that does two service flights a week to Dili, so there's no international flights, even though it could probably host international flights. So you kind of see like the other side where the government want to develop, but then they're like squandering money and stuff. But yeah, that was a fascinating place. And then going to like countries like Afghanistan, Iran, just the more then of like having been to like Egypt, Sudan, having seen like how truly kind people can be. And then when I was like riding up through like being in India, then going to Pakistan, again, people were just like, don't go to Pakistan, it's this, it's that. And then when I was in Pakistan, I kind of made the decision kind of on the spot to go to Afghanistan because I realized I could go there. And once I realized that, and even in my head, like, I guess there was no in a way, and it's I don't know, I probably wouldn't recommend it to people because like I just make decisions that I want to make. So like when I have to decide on where I want to go, it's not that like I don't value other people's like my family's opinion or whatever, but like unless someone's kind of been there, then because like people who haven't been to like Iran, for example, will always be like, oh, it's really dangerous in Iran, and the Iranian people are dangerous, and the government or this, that, and the other. And then when you speak to travelers who have been there, you just get like completely different side to the story. You get like the more kind of side from the local people who live there. So then when I was like deciding about going to Pakistan, Afghanistan, I kind of just made that decision myself. So then obviously with that, then you're kind of like at the back of your head, you're just like, again, like before I went to, while I was in Africa and before going there, it's like, oh, like what if something did happen? And then everyone would say like, well, we told him not to go there, but he went there. But then having been to these countries now, there is obviously an element of risk involved. I think that's like the same for any country you can go to in terms of traffic and things like that. So I don't know.
It's a different type of risk, isn't it? I guess depending on where you are, they're different things. How much before you go into places like Pakistan or Afghanistan, Iran or Syria, how much do you research before you get in there? In fact, I've got a question for you, and we're sort of going all around the houses at the moment, Tomas, but it's a question from someone that you know, which is Claire. Hello, Claire, Claire Wyatt. And she said, I want to know what drives you to go to places like Syria and how do you find out about how safe it is to be there? He did Syria in quite a dangerous time, I think. We'll answer specifically about Syria, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot. But in general, how do you find out the information about these places that, let's face it, everything in the media, everything we see, everything we hear online is saying, do not travel. We have travel advisories here in Australia, and I'm sure they're on the red list. So what can you tell me about how you determine and how much time before you go there do you research?
Yeah, so I'll probably just have to take it country by country. So like when I was in India, it was just natural that Pakistan would be the next one. So, usually what I do, and like I said earlier, it's not that I don't value like family or friends' opinions or whatever, but I'll kind of, especially now, like with this, the experience of having been there, done that, instead of like asking like my family about, oh, what do you think about this? I'll just like start finding people who've traveled there themselves, because that's when you get a proper perspective. Because like you said, you read so many things in the media, even myself, like you occasionally have arguments with people because they're just like, and from their side of the view, they're just looking after your well being.
They love you and they don't want something to happen to you.
Exactly. So like parents will always be, and I'm sure like if I do ever have kids and they start gallivanting around the world and they go to whatever dangerous country will be there in 20, 30 years time, I'm sure I'll be the same as well. But yeah, so basically, I just go talk to people who've been there, and I'll try to find as many people as I can. And it doesn't matter if they've been on the bike or not, or if they've been driving. Like when I was going to Afghanistan, for example, like Pakistan, a lot of people have traveled to, so that was quite like an easy decision to make. Even being there, then like there was attacks and things going on in different parts of the country, so of course, like you do have to keep your wits about you. And in a way, it's probably just better not to go. Like I probably will have to say that definitely if people text me, I've had a lot of people message me. Even like today, I was talking to some guy about like Syria and stuff, and I was like, look, like I'll never actively tell someone to go there, but if they do want to know more about it, I'll give them whatever information they need. I'll try help them with contacts, and I'll try get even for me like there's some more up to date information. Like this guy today was asking me about like he was like, oh, I want to cross from Turkey. So I messaged one of my friends being like, hey, is the Turkish border open yet? And he was like, no. So I went back to him being like, look, man, it's not open. Like you'll have to come in. Like if you do want to go, you'll have to go a different way. I try to do my due diligence by just talking to as many people. And then with Afghanistan, that was a big one for me because we've all seen the horrors of what has gone on there with the Taliban government, with the war that came after that, and now with the Taliban being back in charge again. And like, there's no way to sugarcoat it. So when I was looking into Afghanistan, I was in Peshawar in Pakistan. So I made the decision like very late. It was kind of it was in my head like a few days before that because I'd learned that you can cycle there. So while I was in Peshawar, I'd been in touch with another guy from Holland, and he was like a couple of days ahead of me. So he'd actually just crossed the border. So then I knew it was okay. So I spoke to a few other people who'd been there, but I could only track down like two other cyclists who'd gone there. One guy who'd gone north to south, and the other guy had gone west to east, whereas I wanted to go east to west. So I spoke to them, and they were just like, "It's mostly okay. Like you might have a few scary moments or whatever, but nothing that should be life threatening or whatever." Then I spoke to some people who had like driven through the country, and their opinion was a little bit different. I remember one couple who had overlanded were just like, "Yeah, we wouldn't recommend it on a bicycle. Definitely not." But for me personally, like once I get like an idea into my head, I kind of get very obsessive about it. And it just goes back to that couple of questions of, will I regret this if I don't do it? Am I holding myself back? And then, like, one of my biggest sayings would be like, no risk, no reward. So then I'm just like, I just kind of pluck up the courage to go. But I think it'll just be different for everyone because, like, you mentioned Fergal earlier on, and Fergal's route through the Middle East would have been very different to the one that he actually took. And, I would have spoken to Fergal at length about like Iran and Afghanistan. And then he met David McCourt as well in
Yes.
Turkey.
Hi, David.
Yeah. David was a big influence on Fergal as well about going, to continuing to Iran after Turkey and continuing on past there. So I think between myself and David, we had, I wouldn't say for myself anyways that I convinced him, but I just, having ridden through Afghanistan at that stage, I gave my personal experiences. And for me, like, we can rip into the Taliban government, we can rip into what had happened during the war there, the Americans, etc. But like for me, I kind of try to look at it more of like a local people's point of view.
Mm.
They're the people I'm going to be engaging with 95% of the time. And when I had spoken to some of the other travelers, they had mentioned that like the locals are very friendly and haven't had the past experience of going through like Egypt and then particularly Sudan, where, people are just like, oh yeah, they're going to make like soup out of you, they're going to kill you, they're going to skin you alive and this, that, and the other. And then, I was just like, okay, Afghanistan can potentially be dangerous, but at the same time, like, what if it goes really well for me as well? And I remember like getting to the border, you still had plenty of time to decide if it was a good decision or not. And more so on like an ethical grounds as well, with the incredibly horrible restrictions on women's life there. And it was like in my head, like, do I kind of want to be a part of that? Because you will see it, you will experience it and stuff. And like,
Or I guess you literally won't see it.
yeah, the other side of it as well. And I was just like, they are questions I will have to answer to as well down the line. But also, it's just like that burning desire inside me to see the world for as it is, like the good, the bad, the ugly. Like not everything you're going to see when you're touring or traveling, you're going to like. And even still today, as I sit here, having had these experiences, I don't want to skip the parts that I think I may not like. And that might be, cycling through a country where they have a brutal government in charge, or cycling through a desert. I don't particularly like desert stretches just because I just struggle internally through them and mentally and emotionally and stuff. But I don't want to skip them either just because I don't want to think that I'm going to be taking the easy way out of everything. So yeah, that's pretty much that. And then, for example, I suppose continuing on from there, going to Iran, I'd heard wonderful things about Iran. Like so many people have traveled there, the gateway between Europe and kind of transitioning into like Central Asia, whether you continue up through Upper Central Asia to the Pamir, or take the route that I took through kind of like South Central Asia, I guess, like through Pakistan, India, continuing on. And I've heard great things about Iran, but it's also at the back of your mind then, like, oh, what if they accuse you of being, like, you've heard the other side of stories as well, where people have just been randomly arrested, accused of being spies. So, all that is at the back of your mind. And even when you're there, like traveling to Afghanistan every day, you've so much time to think on your own again and stuff. And you're just like, oh, Jesus, like, what if something bad happens here? What if I don't feel comfortable going through? Because I have spoken to people who, like, one guy just left the country after 8 or 9 days because he hated it. He just hated it. He didn't like what he was seeing. He didn't like, all the, you get incredible amounts of attention from local people there. And I don't think, like, I didn't see it as anything threatening or whatever. It was just because I had experience from this in Africa as well, like going through small villages in Africa where the sight of a foreigner is just like unknown to a lot of people, that it's a rare thing that they don't experience, maybe not every day or whatever. And I guess it's like a novelty for them. It's exciting for them that, this random dude passes through on a bicycle unannounced. You need to stop to eat and drink or whatever. And then all of a sudden you could have like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people around you. And they're just curious. They want to know where you came from, what you're doing, and for them, I suppose, like trying to leave or trying to go traveling like we do, I suppose they don't really have the same opportunity. So when I had that in Afghanistan, dealing with crowds around me, I didn't feel intimidated. Obviously, it'd be a completely different situation for a woman, I'd imagine, for sure. When you have like 20, 30 men just standing around staring at you.
I've wondered that because I know there are women who have travelled there. I'm not sure on a bike.
Itchy Boots is
Itchy Boots
there.
has travelled there,
She's there at the
definitely.
moment.
Is it Charlene Overlanding or something? I think there's another lady. I may have gotten
Yeah,
her name wrong.
there's been a couple. I
Yeah.
know there's been like a Danish couple. I think they were Danish and Norwegian.
Katya and Martin. I've actually interviewed them on their South America and American trip, and they both went there
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
couple.
they went there as a couple. I also heard, but I just haven't had it verified, that a woman cycled through on her own and managed to get across the country. But again, I don't know if anyone listening has heard that as well, or it might just be rumors or something. But I did hear that, so I don't know. So yeah, it's like from an ethical point of view, it is a tough one. But also like again, like this is just my personal opinion, but I don't believe in like collective punishment. I don't think people shouldn't travel to the country because like so my first evening in Kabul when I got to Kabul. I got to the hotel and it was kind of like the hotel where like just it was like $20 a night, nothing fancy about the place. It was kind of like the backpackers hotel or whatever. There's no hostels or whatever in Kabul, but I met an American woman at the desk at the reception and she had planned to go to Afghanistan for 2 weeks. She was traveling alone and she stayed for 5 weeks. She loved it and she said she just had an incredible experience. And then we got chatting a bit more about it. And unfortunately, she was leaving that next day, so we didn't get to like chat all night about it or whatever. But she basically had just mentioned that like because being there as a male, when you go to someone's house, because some countries in the Middle East, you would have like where you get invited into someone's home, you'd have like the male section of the house where you'd go with the other males, and then you'd have the female section of the house where the females would all gather together. So she was able to see, I guess, the other side to what I didn't get to see being a male, that she got taken to the women's side of the house, and she got to speak to the women.
Mm.
And the thing with local people in these countries, in your Afghanistans, your Irans, your Syrias, your Lebanons, people are so brutally honest about what happened there, their experiences, their opinions and stuff. So being there and talking to local people and just like the stories you're hearing, what they're saying and stuff, like it's not like that. You have the Taliban government and their very crazy, fucking outdated view of Islam, like medieval kind of stuff. It's not even like anyone who's like involved with Islam or Muslim, like they'll tell you like this is not Islam as it should be or whatever. But when you're talking to local people, they hate what's going on there. Because people are dads, their moms, like they have kids, they just want the best for their kids and stuff. So like the fact that like girls can't go to school after 12, I've spoken to so many parents, dads, I guess, that just hated it because they're just like, our child is like depressed. We're trying to, she's asking like, why can I not go to school as a female, but like my brother who's a male can go to school. They just don't know how to explain that to their daughters because it's just like, how can you explain that like that they basically have no role in life anymore or
They
Afghan
hidden
society
from
pretty much
society
because
as well. Yeah,
yeah,
completely and controlled. Because that element of it always comes into my mind with countries like that is because I've interviewed people, a few people now like yourself, who their interactions with the local people have always been amazing. And it's not to say they haven't experienced and witnessed and seen horrible things that have occurred there either. Like you said, there's no sugarcoating it. You're going into a war torn zone. You're not seeing, it's not blue sky, sunflowers, rainbows, and unicorns there, right? There's a grim reality to being there. I try and balance it as well because I want to show what the reality is and what the reality of your experience is, and I guess that's all you can talk to. And then on my mind, I'm like, I'm a woman. I really, really hate the idea that there are women in a country that have their rights so restricted in this way. And I often sometimes feel torn, and listeners maybe tell me what I should think about this. I sometimes feel torn about speaking about it because of that side of it, because of that 50% of a population is like that. And I also remind myself that I can't judge a people by its government, and especially one that they have no control over, which I think is what you're talking about there. But yeah, it's a really hard one to ethically balance, isn't it?
yeah. And even now, like, I do wonder, like, was it right for me? to go there? Was it right for me to go to Syria? So right after the civil war had finished, like I'd gone there, like
Stuff was going down, right?
yeah, and then you're kind of wondering, like, is it a place that you need to really go with your bicycle? But then, it's just the intrigue brings me there. Like I said, as much as I might hate what I see
Mm.
inside of me as well, I still want to go to XYZ countries to kind of experience it as well.
How different was Syria, say, from Afghanistan? Both super rocked by horrendous wars that lasted so long. Syria, you were there, like you said, at the time of year. I think you were there in March this year. Was it late February, early March?
Yeah, late February, March.
Stuff was still going down, really, let's put it that way. Like, it seems stupid to compare two countries because I imagine the cultures are different, but comparing them from that context of being war torn, how different was it? Like, did you feel an edginess that was similar in Afghanistan to Syria? Was it completely different? Like, how was it there?
So I think Afghanistan was a bit more settled in a way because I was there in January 2024
Mm-hmm.
and the Taliban had retaken power, or power had been essentially handed back to the Taliban by the Americans in, was it August 21 or 22?
Oh gosh, I could Google the
I
answer
might
if
have
we
to
need
Google,
to, but
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
one or the other
yeah.
anyways.
Regardless,
So like I hadn't
recently,
gone to
when you think
yeah,
of it,
I hadn't gone to Afghanistan like right after it
yeah,
had happened, whereas in Syria, like the revolution happened in early December and I rock up with my bicycle at the tail end of February, start of March. Um, and Syria, like going back to what Claire had asked earlier on about like how do you like plan to go to these countries or how do you prepare for it? Like Syria was so different because as far as I know, no one had like no foreigner at least anyways had cycle toured in Syria since before 2011.
yeah,
Um, so like that's like a 15-year gap of having zero information about anything there. And while I was in Jordan, so like I think I was in Saudi Arabia when the revolution happened, and I got into Jordan, and then I was kind of like pedaling through Jordan, kind of February time or whatever. You're in these various WhatsApp groups, and people have been mentioning Syria and stuff, and I was just like, oh, like what a stupid idea! Like, why do you want to go to Syria now? Like the revolution just happened and stuff, and the country's probably still in chaos. But then again, like Afghanistan had come into my head, or like Africa or Sudan or whatever come into my head. I was just like, oh, hold on, what if I just look into it a bit more? So again, try to find someone who'd cycle there, message into whatever groups I could find. Just nothing came back. Just no one had said that they'd been there. So I was like, right, cross that off my list. And then I was like, right, what's the next big thing? Try. So I was like Googling or Instagram hashtag Syria, like Syria.
does anything come up, or is it a shadow banned? The world we live in with that, right?
Yeah. So like, you had these like YouTubers now who had gone there like right after the Civil War had, or the revolution. Sorry, yeah, Civil War finished, the revolution started or whatever, and they'd gone there like a week or two after it had kind of started to calm down a bit. So I watched a couple of YouTube videos and then started messaging like just anything I could think of, just trying to find businesses, tour guide businesses. I was messaging a few of them and I was like, hey, it might sound like a stupid idea, but I'm in Jordan on my bicycle and I want to come to Syria. Like, is it possible? Like, can you go? And then I was getting like mostly positive feedback back to me. But then at the same time, also people were just like, you can maybe, but like, there's only like X amount of the country you can visit. So then I started like doing a bit more research about the Civil War, about the revolution, what had happened after the revolution, or what was going to, or how it was like starting to settle down or whatever. And then, you look a bit more into it, and I realized then, like, maybe there's one safe kind of route I can do. But at the same time, I didn't even know if I could get into the country because, like I said, I couldn't find anyone who'd cycle there. But I was in Jordan, so I just rode up to the border. When I eventually made the decision to go and try it, I was like, look, I'll go up to the border. The fighting, I was just told basically like the security situation is more settled, but it can still be very random. So basically, like something could happen, but you just never knew when it may or may not happen. Again, going back to like no risk, no reward, wanting to just that intrigue inside me. Because initially I was meant to go to Iraq. So I was like, look, if I can't get into Syria, I'll just go continue Jordan as I planned and continue to Iraq and just loop a different way back into Turkey or whatever. So then, yeah, got to the border and it was just like those couple of days cycling up there, you're just, again, like that anxiety started to build again. And I had it a little bit before going to Afghanistan,
Hmm.
but at least a couple of people had ridden Afghanistan. They'd ridden their bicycles in Afghanistan, at least. People had driven in Afghanistan. So at least I had that. Whereas in Syria, all I kind of had was just like a couple of NGO contacts or whatever. And their obviously guidance was just like, don't go, because they get all the red flags and stuff. And I was added to this group chat and I was getting all these like messages about things that were going on that I wouldn't have known or that you wouldn't really find on the internet, but information that like the NGOs were getting. And then like I remember the Irish embassy in Jordan had actually emailed me and they follow me on Twitter and they were and but before this was even before I'd even made the decision to go to Syria because I hadn't really like put it online that I was going to Syria. I just wanted to see if I could get into the country and then I could say, well, I got in, now I'm in Syria, so let's go. But they had emailed me being like, oh, we see that you're in Jordan, you're meant to be going to Iraq and Iran and whatever, crossing Europe. They were just like, with things that are going on, just like basically get out of here. And then, oddly enough, I got invited. So when I was in Amman, the capital of Jordan, I got invited to watch an Irish rugby game. They were playing Wales.
That is a random sentence as well.
Yeah, yeah. But at this bar, I'd met all these like lovely Irish people, and you'd good old crack and stuff.
Did they win? Just quickly.
Yeah, we won. Yeah, yeah, we beat Wales. But anyways, while I was at that bar, there was an American diplomat at the table as well, and anyways, like one of the Irish guys who invited me would obviously have followed me on Instagram or whatever. So he was like telling people like, "Oh, this is Thomas. He's cycling, blah blah blah." So, anyways, this American dude started talking, and he was like going around the table asking everyone what, because he obviously it was his first night there as well. However, he got invited, but he was just chatting to people, being like, "Oh, like, hey, I'm whoever. I'm doing this. What are you guys doing here?" And then all the Irish people were telling them what they were doing, and then it got to me, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm just here, just traveling, in Jordan for a couple of weeks, and I'm heading off then again soon." One of the Irish guys was like, "No, like, go on, tell him what you're really doing." And I was like, "No, no, no, he won't like it." So anyways, he kind of pushed it a bit, and I was like, "Okay, I'm on a bicycle." And he was like, "Oh yeah, cool. Like, where have you been?" So I told him like I'd been traveling through like UAE, Oman, Saudi, and he was like, "Where are you going next?" And I says, "Oh, I'm going to try to get into Syria." And just immediately, his just face dropped and just completely changed his tone. And he started texting someone, and he was texting his wife because she's a diplomat as well. And it just got like a bit childish because he is like, he's diplomat for nearly 3 decades now. And then he was like, "Oh, like, if you hear what my wife is saying now, and like, she'd take you outside and she'd give out stink to you and stuff." And like, God, it was just like, he was just so really, really negative about it, but kind of like in a bit of a childish way, in my opinion. So then, actually, funny enough, that same evening at another table was the Irish ambassador. And this was just like, I just kind of find it funny, just the difference in like how, we'll say, the American diplomat had spoken to me about Syria and then how the Irish ambassador did, because when she came over to the table, I didn't tell her what I was initially doing there because just in case if she brought up the email or something or whatever. So, anyways, one of the guys was telling her, and then she just went into full mammy mode. She was just like, obviously, as an ambassador, I have to tell you not to go, but just as a mother as well, just be very, very, very careful. She gave me her personal number, like, please check in, please let me know you're doing okay, and if we can do anything or if you get any spot of bother. Whereas the American guy was just, "You're an idiot, you're this, you're that." And then I was taking photographs with a couple of the Irish people at the end of the night, and he was like, "Oh, is that the photograph they're going to use when you get kidnapped and we have to go look for you?" And I was just like,
Whoa.
yeah, it was just like, I was just like, man, like, I don't even, but it was just, even looking back on it now, I'm just like, just the difference in like how, I guess, she dealt with it and how he dealt with it. So yeah, obviously that was in my mind getting into Syria.
Can I ask, did you ever message her when you were in Syria? Did you ever send her a message and just say, "Hey, I'm okay"?
No,
Have you been in touch with her since?
no, I haven't, no. Or did I message her once, maybe? I think I let her know that I got into Syria. But see, then while I was in Syria, like the massacres and stuff happened.
That's what I mean. Like, when you were there,
Yeah, yeah, that happened while I was there. So like,
shit got real.
yeah, yeah. So I guess they had kind of more stuff to be dealing with, and when that happened while I was there, I was in like, funnily enough. So before that, we'll say like, so when I crossed the border, so I got into Syria after a bit of hassle at the Jordanian side because they didn't want, like, they were just like, "Why are you going?" I guess they tried to talk me out of it, And then I was kind of adamant, like, no, I want to go. Like, I'll be fine. I have friends and contacts and stuff there. And so, anyways, they let me across the border, and then so anyways, got through the Syrian side, not a bother, no questions asked. And then I rode away, just rode away on my bike from the border. And the big difference was like just noticeably straight away. It was just the buildings were just destroyed. Like Afghanistan has, they had constant war since 1979 with the Soviets, and then they were civil war, then the American kind of NATO invasion. But it just the scale of destruction in between the difference between Afghanistan and Syria was just like Syria was just even now, like sometimes I find myself just lying in bed and I start looking back in the photographs and videos and stuff, and you're kind of just like, what, like what the fuck kind of way. Even now, trying to make sense of it all. And I remember like getting to the first building I saw, and it was like a playground for kids. It seemed to be just like either like a big community hall or like maybe a school or something. And it was just like there was no windows, no doors. There was just bullet holes everywhere, like shell holes. And I remember just like getting off the bike, parking the bike, and then I was just like, shit, like what if like there's mines or something still left in the ground? So I like
Yeah.
started tippy toe. Yeah, it was just, and that was like the first moment where just like, do I just turn back? Like, am I even?
Because you've just left the border here.
Yeah, literally like 10 kilometers up the road. Yeah, and I was just like, oh yeah,
I've got goosebumps. Just like thinking about that. It's giving me chills.
yeah. I was like, should I just turn back now? Like, do I need to be here? Like, is this something I need to see? Is this something I'm even ready to see?
Mm.
And then again, I was like, no, this is what I set out to do, whether I like it or not. This is part of the journey, and that's like just how the journey has like evolved for me in a way.
Okay, listeners, and this is the end of part 1 of the conversation with Tomas. I hope you have enjoyed the experiences that he has shared with us so far. They've been absolutely mind-blowing. When I was listening back through the audio edit, it really made me pause it so many times just to think what Tomas has actually done with his journey, where he's gone, the decisions he's made to go to areas that, like Syria, like Afghanistan, and also what was going on around and the climate in being in those countries at that time as well. Part 2 is no less enthralling, and we go deeper into the details of the reality of travelling to these countries. Tomas and I have a very candid conversation about Afghanistan, his experiences there, but also the experiences of women in that country as well, and his insights on that too. So keep your eye out for part 2. It comes out next week. And listeners, if you enjoy hearing the incredible stories of guests like Tomas and you love this podcast and you want to show your support as a superfan, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Buy me a few virtual coffees and let me know what is it that you do love about this podcast and where is the next bike adventure going to be taking you. Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Listeners, that's the end of the episode. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Old Man Mountain. They have a bike rack solution for every type of bike. Personally, their axle pack mount have helped turn my dual suspension mountain bike into the perfect adventure machine. Head to oldmanmountain.com to check it out and start planning your next bike adventure.